advertising your projects right. Now, what has happened is traditionally builders have been relied upon out-of-home advertising, and they have also dependent on the physical sales. Apart from this, now because of this coronavirus situations, advertising has moved online, and there initially it is more into lead generation. But what is it that builders, buyers are doing? Builders are doing to in order to attract these home buyers, and how are they advertising their properties, and especially the fact that whatever they advertise, they have to have this when it comes to implementation at the ground level. So will this be the same thing that they whatever they are advertising will this be developed, will be the same thing developed, is what the first question comes to buyer's mind. So this is what we would look at. This comes under transparency. And then social media, of course, the Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, all these now, they never have been used much by the real estate builders, because whatever they generated from was from digital sales. Now that this has come in, Facebook, Twitter, social, and LinkedIn suddenly have become very more important, and then online advertising also. So we would look at how builders across the country are coming up with new strategies, how they will be coming up with new tech strategies that will help them, your home buyers, how will they will advertise their properties. This is how we would look at. So we will be joined in this session. We will be joined by five panelists: Anurag Mathur, who is the CEO of Savills India; Chaitanya Seth, who is from EY India; K. Mukundraj, who is CEO of Raymond Realty; Kanchana Krishnan, who is from Senior Director in JLL India; and Nimish Gupta, who is MD RICS. Right. So I welcome you all. Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks, Ankit. Good to be here.
Okay, okay.
Thanks,
So,
Ankit.
right. So I will start with Nimish. Before we begin with, how do you see this current market as of now?
Well, you heard in the first panel, Ankit, there were conflicting statements which were coming up, and that remains the dichotomy of the situation today. Because we are yet to see the bottom of the crisis, we will see conflicting situations. But as far as I consider, I mean, let's start it from the macroeconomic perspective. Again, you possibly would read conflicting situations over here, but as far as we know, as far as we try and understand the past crises which have happened earlier, there has always been a huge recovery in the economy. There has always been a increased consumption post these crises, and I do believe that will actually spur the economy, not just from the macroeconomic perspective, but from the real estate perspective also. Given the fact that, and Sanjay briefly touched upon it, that the equity had a huge fall during this crisis. We need to understand that the kind of swings which we see in the equity market is humongous in a short period of time. Real estate never goes through that kind of swing. It's a reasonably safe investment as far as your capital protections are concerned, given that now we have new regulatory regimes which are ensuring that your capital is protected. I do believe I have a huge hopes from what the macroeconomic situation would be, how the world would see India as a country, as an investment destination, and how would the consumers, we heard statements around affordable housing, we heard statements around the luxury housing also, the niche segments buying into it, and possibly the millennials who actually play a huge role in consumption patterns will come back to fore. Earlier, they used to invest a lot in experiences, and they would try and resist from capital buying. But today, because the avenues of experiential spending is limited, I do believe that they would try and basically increase their consumption on some of the commodities and real estate sector. So that I believe is going to spur the real estate sector significantly.
Okay, Mr. Mukund, when it comes to one thing that is very important is that if we see that DDA or any other government authorities, when they sell properties, it is easily, buyers easily go for buying it. So it is it is about the trust factor. Now builders, when they start advertising it online, do you think that we will have the similar kind of trust factor about it? And if not, what can builders do in order to gain this kind of trust? And second is, how do you think that this online advertising will play a role in gaining buyers when it comes to builders across India?
Ankit, good afternoon. Just adding to what Nimish said just now, a couple of points just wanted to add to that before I give answer to the query that you had. One issue which in the midterm, I'm talking of the next 3 to 6 months, the only issue which could have some amount of an impact on the demand, particularly for the housing sector, would be, since this is a discretionary spend for most of the buyers of the house, whether it is as an investment as an end user, and with all the job losses and the pay cuts which a lot of industries are facing through. So it's just a matter of the next 3 to 6 months being a discretionary spend. We could see some slackening of the demand for residential, but then this is definitely a short-term issue. Maybe towards the festive season of September, October, I believe this mood should come back, and people should again start looking at housing as an investment option. So this is one point I just wanted to add to what Nimish said. Now, coming to advertisement, Ankit, the point was, as on today, a lot of us are mostly into other modes of advertisement, whether it is the print or we have the hoardings and all the OH and all the other areas. Some of us are also in the digital arena, but today what would happen is, with RERA coming in, with disclosures becoming much more compelling for the developer, and it's mandatory that whatever we promise is what we deliver. Keeping in view this, the content that would go into the digital thing has to be exactly in line with the sample flat that we would build to showcase to the customer, as well as whatever goes into the script of the agreement for sale and all the documentation. So the builders need to be 100% sure there is 100%, I mean, there is a complete disclosure and compliance when it comes to actually creating the product in line with the disclosure. So there will be a lot of onus and responsibility on the builders. So a double check on what goes on as a content is definitely required.
Okay, Kanchana, when it comes to the southern market, both developers and buyers, they are more quickly they more adopt the technologies very quickly, and they come up with new solutions and use social media more. How do you think that do you think that builders in south will be will easily adapt to this kind of situation and then start selling properties online? And what are the learnings that north or west region can have from the southern market?
Ankit, hi. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, I think a video is worth 1,000,000. So I think the Darwin's theory is at play now. It's not the strongest which survives, it's the most intelligent and the most adaptive that survives. So to give you a few statistics on how digital media is, it's not that real estate industry has not been using technology. We have been using technology. Technology platforms already exist in our industry. It's just that how effective it was put to use until now. Until the last 6 weeks, how effective we were using it. The organizations which has put it into effective use must have effortlessly moved into the new norm of doing business. So that's one important aspect that everyone has to keep in mind. A few important statistics is digital medium in the last 5 years has seen a growth of at a CAGR of 38.5%. The print or TV or any other medium has only seen a single-digit growth. India's internet users today has crossed 570 million, out of which 40% is from rural area thanks to the Digital India initiative of the government. And if you look at India's smartphone users, it's going to touch 829 million by 2022. So using digital is no longer optional. I think it's the way we have to do business. I think businesses need to fundamentally rethink how do we create value and what is important now and in the future. I think that is more important for us or for all organizations to stay ahead of the curve, Ankit. It's not about North India or South India. I think it's about digital. It's about how you embrace technology and how you come back to the new norm that will decide the business model.
Right, right. So, Anurag, even if builders or other stakeholders adopt these kind of new technologies or new methods and online advertising and sales, do you think that this will eventually lead to actual sales when it happen when it comes to buying properties? Do you think that buyers in India are actually ready for this kind of sales that happen online when it comes to private builders?
So I'm saying it's a complex question, and you are basically asking me to speculate to say whether properties volumes will go up if the digital medium comes in. So I'll try and answer them separately. Look, and there are a couple of things, sub points that you have brought up, and I'll deal with them in one by one. So first is whether digital is the way to do it, and will it people embrace it, and will it lead to sales and so on and so forth. Look, my view is personally, uh, if we believe that demonetization when it happened was the catalyst for digital payments to happen, this instance that we are going through is going to catalyze the whole digital economy, the commerce bit. Whether you see e-commerce, whether you see e-selling, etc. And I think real estate will have to move into that space. If you see, we had in first time in our history, Indian Railways shut down, air flights shut down, but e-commerce was allowed. So you're buying your groceries and your vegetables and your medicines through e-commerce. That's the power of digital medium. And as Kanchana just outlined the statistics of the reach of technology, digital is the way to go for real estate and specifically for housing industry. um, this we've used so far what I call as omni channels, but with a greater emphasis on physical marketing. So if you go back and look at marketing techniques for developers, what they would do is they would first launch a product on newspaper. Front pages were for years, for more than a decade, were hogged by real estate residential things. Then when the slowdown happened, they moved from front page to the supplementary sections and so on, but they would still bring out full page ads, and you'll have pre-sales and launch offers, etc. So that was the primary mode. Then the next stage came when they built a show apartment, and invariably the show apartment annual of the show apartment meant, and they would spend a couple of crores doing this show apartment. The fanciest designers, the fanciest furniture vendors, light fittings, carpets, etc. used to come into that show apartment. And when the show apartment happened, the prices would go up 10% because people could walk in and come and touch, feel, and see what the apartment will look like and be ready to pay a little more because now it's becoming more reality. And then the ground baking and so on and so forth. I believe all of that will remain, perhaps, and digital became incidental to that. Sorry to go back. So you would also run a digital campaign, etc., etc. I think this will flip now, which means you would change. So the ancillary position that you gave to the digital marketing would now go into the newspaper and everything else, but digital will be at the forefront. So I think that experimentation is now happening very fast. The technology is in place. It just needs to be used. And I think the government will have to play a role in it if we really do want to take advantage of this. To give you an example, Savills, we play significantly in residential real estate globally. UK is a home market, and we are now moving into that space very quickly. We just completed our first e-auction for properties. So the properties are sold on an e-auction. On our Ireland business website, we are doing virtual inspections with an option to close a transaction online. Now, I believe as of last couple of weeks, no online transaction has been completed, which means end to end, but people have viewing apartments and making commitment or making down payments to buy apartments and so on. I think that's going to become the new reality. More and more that will start to happen. And last quick one, and I'm not sure if you directed that to me, but you did mention saying should private developers be able to succeed in this, etc. And I think the example that you brought out was DDA. Now remember, it's an unequal situations examples. DDA housing, and I have personally bought a DDA apartment, so I know. A DDA apartment was a government provided substandard subsidized apartment. What it meant was it was a draw of lots. You apply online. If you buy, if you get it, if you're lucky, you get it for 15 lakhs, but you can in 3 months' time sell it for 20 lakhs. That's the reason people, and it was almost like a sovereign guarantee that you will get it. No one will defraud you. So you will get it. Now, cut that to now where DDS stopped selling subsidized apartments and they're not being able to sell everything. So it's not the issue of digital over there or online over there. It was more the issue of subsidy rather than anything. As a matter of fact, the DD apartment is anything but digital. And I bought it. You will get a letter saying you've been allotted, but after that, there was no digital semblances of automation or digital. You were
So,
going to government offices and windows and all that. So
so
sorry,
you are
long
saying
answer, but
prices.
that's my
So you are saying prices will play an important role because if price.
Not really. Again, you would ask the question in the previous panel of Mr. Hiranandani and Sanjay Dutt about price correction, etc. I have a slightly contrarian view. First of all, I think there was a statement made by one eminent personality a couple of weeks ago saying prices will drop by 20%. I doubt if there is a scope for prices to drop by 20%, because if that has to happen, someone has to go down, because 20% is a big number. Someone will go down, someone will go under the bus if 20% has to drop. Secondly, to me, dropping prices to drive up volume is the laziest way to drive sales and to do things, which will send exactly the wrong signal in the market saying these guys were trying to hijack and making a bumper profit. Now they're dropping by prices and doing that. What's the guarantee that they will further not drop? So let's wait and watch. So to my mind, prices I don't think can drop significantly, certainly not 20% as on a across the board basis. And second, to my mind, they should not be dropped by developers. Look, it's an open market position. So if someone wants to drop, no one can stop him, like Mr. Hiranandani said. But across the board and to that level, I don't think
Okay,
that should happen.
Chetan. Okay, so I will come to Chaitanya. Geography plays an important role whenever if we are to sell properties online, especially. Uh, do you think that because of the use of social media and new technologies, will builder adopt to it? So, for instance, if it's in Bangalore, they will use the regional language, and if it's in Kolkata, they will use the regional language. How do you think that they are
Hello.
strategizing their business? Yeah,
Hello.
yeah. Mr. Mukund, if you can answer the same question, I will come back to Chaitanya again.
You want,
Okay, anyone?
Nimish, if you want to take that
Yeah,
answer? Yeah, you can go ahead, Nimish.
yeah, I'll just take that up because this is something which I propose. I mean, today, if you're looking at situations, Ankit, if you're looking at millennials and Gen Z, they rule the roost in terms of consumption. They have more regards for brand, which have a point of view and stand for something. They need a bit of storytelling over here. And if I look at that class, which is looking at consumption patterns plus affordable housing, which is extremely important. So when you look at affordable housing, which social strata are we dealing? We are dealing with those people who are looking at local consumption, who are looking at consumption for their own residential purposes, which means there is no investment approach to that. They just want to make sure that they try and win those houses for their own residential purposes. In such case, vernacular medium, vernacular advertising becomes extremely important, whether it is your social media, whether it is your print campaign. But I always believe digital campaign, digital engagement is first before you go on to TV or print campaign. It is extremely important, and we were mentioning some of the panelists over here mentioned also getting the first party data instead of secondary or tertiary data is extremely important. Driven by AI for better conversion. Anurag did mention about PropTech. That will be a necessity, not a gimmick anymore. And that's where, when you're looking at, and this would be my advice to most of the developers, look at the power of social media and don't look at only conventional social media. Look at new age social media. If you're looking at influencer marketing, That influencer marketing may have to go to TikToks, may have to go to Hellos. That may not go, I mean, that may have to go to Instagram. So that's the kind of platform which people will have to use. Try and completely change their thought process from a conventional approach to a completely digital approach. Vernacular would be a medium which I would suggest that they should use it to boost up their sales in affordable housing and lower price segment for sure.
How do you think that builders are re-strategizing their overall business model and selling or advertising of properties? So, for instance, most of their budget went into the physical sales and physical advertising, out of home advertising. Now, do you think that whoever across industry, especially in the regions where the projects have been complete and but they are ready to sell, do you think that they are going through a different kind of business model? They are re-strategizing it. They are using more technologies or thing like that, because the technology exists. It comes to adaptation. So what is your take on it?
So, Ankit, very relevant. Let me first tell you that there is no option left with the developers but to reinvent. The reason is the consumer himself. If you look at the customer today, before he actually comes to the developer site, he has done enough and more research. So his consideration set is all established. He would have gone through the website, he would have seen ads, forums, aggregator site. So essentially, when he comes there, he pretty much knows about the micro market, the price trends there, the amenities, the competition. So there's an information asymmetry. So customer knows much more than the buyer knows about me, seller knows about me, which means that the developer has no option but to tap these buyers from the time of the awareness, research, and interest phase. And the only tool which can help them do is digital. So I think that's where developers have been doing that. So if you look at pre-COVID, most of the developers obviously had different journeys. Some developers have been doing it for far more experimental basis. But now I think it is coming very clear that unless they make it a very or well orchestrated, oiled machinery, they will not be able to reach out. So two things are bound to happen. One, A, people are going to generate far more leads through this. Because simply the scale which can give up, right? The scale which can give can allow you to go beyond your boundaries, the NRI markets or the outside your core micro market. It allows you to generate far more leads. Second is the entire engagement angle. So it's not the selling is not a point in time, it's a journey. It's not an event that I go today and buy. It's a pretty much a longish cycle. And that's where the interventions of having the digital marketing at different mediums, through my Facebook or the digital platforms or my website. Today website is largely used as a publishing engine or maybe a as based lead generation engine, but it needs to evolve where I can actually provide those immersive interactive experiences. In this social distancing and work from home, we'll clearly find probably what it used to take maybe 3 site visits to make a conversion, it will drop to probably 1.5. Now how are you going to bridge that gap of 1.5? The only way it can happen is through those digital interventions, and that's where developers are quickly reimagining and adapting themselves to see how can they actually get onto this and make it actually work for them. The last bit on this would be, it also means that we need to reshape and reskill our organization structure, which means the way we look at our people, our employees, their training, their understanding, the skill level, all thing needs to be relooked at to ensure that customers and the seller are kind of far more aligned.
Okay, Kanchana, because Chaitanya mentioned about the lead generation. Now, builders traditionally have been very hesitant when it comes to doing online advertising and online sales. The reason because that the lead from the lead to the actual conversion of selling buying properties is very less. Have been very less because of the bias mindset of touching and feeling the properties before they buy it. Do you think that even if builders adapt to these kind of technologies, builders move online advertising, do you think that lead generation will actually lead to this kind of actual sales? Do you think that builders will give enough budget to these kind of online advertising from the existing one, because it has been very less? So do you think this kind of change happening?
Ankit, I can't agree more with Chaitanya. 92% of potential buyers do research online. So it's about how you upgrade your online portal. It's not about just having a portal. It's about how you keep engaging the online portal, what content you create, how rich and varied the content is. So it actually etches in the buyer's mind. That's extremely important. So in simple words to say, I think it's important to not have a protective business model. You can protect your business, but you can't have a business model which is very protective. You have to try diverse options. Today, in fact, we've spoken this time and again. Today, two largest housing portals in India are owned by an internet services company and a large media house. So there is competition from a different perspective. It's not the traditional real estate companies which are fighting with each other. So the competition is intense. Technology is taking the industry by storm. So it's very important to understand that our content is good, and so only that can bring in traction into the buyers. If you're to answer your question, can lead get generated? It's very important to enrich the content. Make sure the user experience is very important. I think I read somewhere real estate is today not about location, location, location. It's about location, analytics, experience. The larger you enhance the customer's experience, I think there's 1.5 times that Chaitanya mentioned will get bridged. The larger you enhance the experience, the transparent you are, and the more trustworthy information you posted in your digital websites or online platforms or portals, I think 50% of your problem is solved. The balance 50% can be handled by physical interface, speaking, touch and feel, all that can be done. But at this point in time, at least for the next 6, 8, 10, 12 months, we don't know what that timeline is until we find a cure, until we find a vaccine. It's very important. I think right now we have to understand that it's not about surviving, it's also about thriving. So that's my take on this, Ankit.
Okay, Anurag. If we leave the top builders, online presence, even the websites and their engagement and on social media and others have been very negligible. Real estate builders across India, if you leave the top builders aside, they have not relied upon online sales. So even their websites and social media presence is very negligible. Do you think that they are ready for this kind of change? Because the technology exists and obviously the marketing strategies are there and top builders are adopting it, that means that others can adopt it also. So why do you think that they are hesitant to do so? And do you think this can accelerate that process?
Yeah. Look, to be honest, it's a two-way street. I can build a beautiful bells and whistles platform, but if no one comes over there and bites into it, what's the purpose? What good is it? And therefore, there has been inconsistency in the entire digital channel or the whole cycle, is to say. The funnel has always been very big. It's like a funnel. So the starting point is very big, but then it narrows down, and somewhere there was inconsistency. Things would break down. Uh, but there is an inflection point, and I believe for that, this current incidence is the inflection point where the behavior will start to change. When demonetization happened, how much digital payments opportunities that we did we have at that time? Very few, hardly anything that existed. I mean, there was Paytm, which was also like more like a hobby than a necessity. But come today, you have such a. I mean, our UPI system is the largest uses. I mean, it's larger than Mastercard and Visa and all those kind of things. It's got a huge acceptance and usability. And in the current environment, it's been fully put to test, and people have come out harmless out of that. I mean, they've really thrived. So the point being, this current situation will drive that. Now, there is no question about it. If you want to be relevant in the market, that you can sidestep saying, I won't play that. And everyone else can take credit cards and e-payments, etc. But I only want hard currency. That's not going to work. I mean, you are refusing to participate in the majority situation. So similarly, developers who want to be relevant and who want to market their products and do brisk sales and have a quality engagement with their potential customers will have to move digital. How fast, how much do they do? That's a moot question. I can't answer that. And how many will do it, I don't know. But I think the budgets and the focus will move towards that. Also, there's a point I also want to make is I think the government will have to play a ball in this because just to do the initial part, because we at this point have virtually no concept of digital contracting, um, and that has to change. That needs to change quite fast. Again, it's possible and it can be fast tracked, but it has to happen. And effectively, you can initiate an inquiry and actually close the sale. All of this should be able to uh, close on digital.
Okay,
So
okay.
I think that's going to happen.
Okay, Mr. Mukund, even if builders move online, it comes down to the trust factor. So buyers will be reluctant to know if what is being advertised and what is being shown to them. Is it the same thing that is being developed by the builder at the project level? Because even if RERA has come in, the main factor has always been the trust that has eluded the home buyers till date because of the delayed projects or because of the different things that have happened across real estate. So if we move online, how easy it is for builders to gain this trust factor, and how do you think that builders can look at luring these home buyers?
Ankit, RERA has in fact achieved several things. One is definitely when it comes to the product, as I said earlier, what is promised is delivered. Second, in terms of the documentation, the legal documentation or the contractual documentation which happens between the developer and the buyer, there is a standard template, both in terms of the payment, whatever milestone that you could collect, the maximum milestone that you could collect. So all those have been specified. So it has brought in definitely a lot of this structural changes, in fact, brought in a lot of trust and transparency on the deal between the customer and the developer. So that part has been streamlined. Now, when we move into the digital as an arena, as I said earlier, the whatever you are talking about on the product has to definitely translate in entirety, even in your digital content. So unless you do that, the customer is not going to be getting into a discussion beyond a particular point with a particular developer. So one is the brand. Obviously, it has to be some brand which is trustworthy. Second, it has to be a product which I'm sure, like Chaitanya and Kanjana have said, they have already been researched. So the prospective customer knows about that particular product. It's just that you are now trying to interface with that customer to engage with him, show him the finer details of the product before you make his particular interest into a closure. Now, this is what the digital has to achieve. Just one point, Ankit, which is relevant in this particular context. One is the marketing and the digital part of it, but unless the end-to-end process of a closure with a customer has a complete digital, I would say, interface into it, like even the registration. Now, the government is talking of online registration as a way forward. I mean, maybe a few months from now, that should also be in. Likewise, organization also need to have a complete automated workflow. The typical SFDCs and all that need to be there. Unless the entire process is automated, it's not going to be giving you the desired solution on the experience for the customer with the builder, as well as the experience of the customer of the developer in closing a deal. So I think it has to be looked at as an end-to-end infrastructure and readiness, rather than its bits and pieces of just I mean, trying to get into the social media or any other media.
Okay,
If I can add
Nimish,
to that, Ankit,
yeah,
if
yeah,
I can add
please,
to that,
please.
I think that's a very important point which you brought up, bringing in transparency. The regulatory framework can only enable as a penalizing mechanism to make sure that things are being delivered as they were promised. But what you heard in the first panel, what you heard today, was basically ensuring that the engaging content leading to that lead generation, which basically then gives you a customer experience and customer centricity, which will then build your brand. That building brand will give you trust, and that trust will actually develop confidence, which is what was discussed in the first panel also. So as Anurag also mentioned, there is digital ecosystem available from end-to-end approach, whether it is prop tech, something which has never been touched upon in India is virtual inspection, or a technology-based inspection. There are platforms available in India which have been used in various entities like UCOP or other AI platforms, which have actually delivered the necessary customer satisfaction to make sure that what the product which was being marketed initially is being delivered at the end also. So I'm sure there are opportunities available for people to adopt technology to make sure that they give the necessary customer centricity and customer experience, which is exactly what Mukund said.
Chaitanya, I will come to you. Do you think that builders in general are, traditionally builders have never adopted the technology that well? So if you leave the top players again, top builders again, the builders across country have been very reluctant to adopt technology. So 3D technology exists for a long time. There are AI, there are augmented reality. There are a lot of things that other builders across and if you look at the other countries, the builders, even the government authorities, they have adopted the digital maps, digital sales, and digital registration. Everything is happening online, and everything is helping in total to help the industry grow. But even in India, when it comes to it, the registration and everything is not online as of now, and builders too are very reluctant to go for 3D technology or other technologies because they don't know how much output will they give in. So, do you think that this accelerate that situation? Do you think that they will now realize how important these things are? So, construction technology has started. Do you think this also will take place?
So, Ankit, very relevant. And let me tie this to the broader theme that Mr. Mukund talked about. The, the key thing for the developer today is to build and inspire trust to the stakeholders. The biggest challenge with this industry faces today is the trust deficit. And trust deficit not only with the customers, maybe also the channel partners or investors or vendors and employees. Now, the way you can build that trust is A, improving the transparency, B, being more available and accessible, and third, being more action oriented. And if I want to achieve these three themes, the only answer is technology and digital. So the if, and obviously the trust cannot be built over a day, right? It requires a process. So, and today, if I have trust, I actually can command premium in the market. And especially in these times, the builders who inspire trust will get more premium. The channel partners will be far more loyal to them and will work far more strongly with them, which means that the trust is a far more greater essence. Now, how do you build that trust? So, for example, if you have a very strong customer portal or an app or a channel partner portal and app, it clearly allows that I'm accessible to you. I have all the requirement details about your invoices, your payments, your demand, your legal documentation, the project status, all the important dates are far more easily available and accessible. And that inspires trust. The second leg is it allows you to communicate effectively. I think a lot of developers in previous past, if I look at it, only used to talk to customers for the payment, and that has to change and is changing and has to change far more strongly, which means that I need to effectively engage with the customers who even booked a flat to ensure that it's a give me a lifetime value. So essentially, technology is the only answer to help you bridge that gap and build that trust. And trust is obviously a very significant value. So yeah.
Okay. Anurag, one part of it I would like to ask to you also. The international part. The other countries, they have adopted a lot of technologies and they are doing it, not just the government side, also the industry side also. So in your view, do you think, so if we can take an example of European country, do you think that we can learn something from it? Do you think that there are some things that we can adopt? So for instance, digital maps or line titles or things like that, which can eventually lead to easy online sales, advertising, and everything. Because if we are to build trust factor, we have to showcase everything that is there, and this kind of things, if we are available across, will help to gain more trust, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, look, the answer is yes and no. Yes, because there are things that have been done elsewhere in the world, and we must replicate them. And if you go by example, India has uh, on most occasions done much better with technology than any other country. Um, that said, we are a large country, we are a democracy, so we have to deal with many sensitive issues. For example, the data protection laws. Now, we see in China, for example, the the usage of technology is far more prevalent than what we have, and it's a large country, very populous country, etc. But the data protection laws are nowhere near what we have. So there is a significant challenge for us. Our literacy levels and so on and so forth, those are challenges. But I think if we have to be more transparent as an economy, we have to really move in the direction of ease of doing business. We'll have to move towards technology. And there are several aspects to it, like you said. So digitization of land records is a very important thing, and it's already ongoing. There's a significant push by the central government for states to convert their land records into digital records. So that process is ongoing. That's work in progress. It should be fast tracked. And several things, the contracting process, it's a digital signatures, etc. All those things must be digitized. I think to be fair, you don't do these many things in vacuum. There is many things that require a bit of a catalyst to come in. I think this is as good a catalyst as any for us to move in that digital journey as a country, as an economy.
Kanchana, while we have been talking about builders, but these other stakeholders, real estate brokers, agent, consultants, they also need to adapt to this kind of changing times. They also need to. So real estate brokers, for instance, also are not very good when it comes to adopting technologies and going online and advertising. So I'm not talking about real estate portals, but the real estate agents and brokers that are there. Do you think that they also need to make some kind of changes in how they work, how they business, and how they strategize, and what kind of impact you are expecting because of this?
Ankit, since you're bringing consultants, I'm telling this. I think JLL as a company has been investing heavily on technology for the last few years. So when this crude shock came in 6 weeks ago, it was difficult. I wouldn't say it was a cakewalk for us also, but our transition was much more smoother. The risks we were able to mitigate it better. So I think necessity is the invention. I don't think we are reinventing ourselves at this point in time. We're just trying to grapple and try and manage and salvage the situation. A very important thing that one has to understand is we should not wait for the change to happen. You will have to grab the bull by its horns. So, classic example to align with Anurag, there is a Chinese startup which started in 2018, a housing portal company. It started in 2018. These statistics are mind-boggling. At this point in time, the housing portal has 4 million listings in their website, and they have a user base of 660 million. And as on 2020, they are servicing across 11 countries. This is the kind of leverage that technology can give you. I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, one has to start implementing and embracing this technology. And it's very important from an organization perspective also to push this. It doesn't happen overnight. Although companies have invested on technology platforms, you call it convenience, you call it reluctance to change, or you call it a lack of business model to adapt to a technology platform. All these are a crude wake-up call for us, and we need to fix all this. And in the future, if you have to thrive, that's the only way, and that's the only way we can thrive, Ankit.
Yeah, Nimish, I will come to you. I have asked this question before, but I will ask it again. Do you think that because there have been many statements that have been made in the last few months, in the last few weeks, actually, that prices needs to be dropped and the prices need to be corrected and reduced when it comes to selling properties, so that more the buyers can be attracted to it or industry can move? Do you think that this is financially viable? Do you think that if we move to, if we are moving to online technology, if we are moving to this kind of new things that needs an operational cost, and if we are going, if builders are giving out money, and if at the same time, can they be, will they be able to reduce the cost of the property prices?
Ankit, I'll pick up where Anurag left, and I think that's a very interesting one, wherein he said, it's like saying, I will drop the prices. It is similar to saying that I will not try to remain afloat in the ocean because I have no will to do it. I will not try and find out other ways of remaining afloat while the ocean is at me. I always believe there is a way to do things. There is always a newer way to ensure that there are things which we can try and control in a different manner, rather than trying to succumb to the pressures just like that because you have a stressful situation. Now, having said that, there would be people who would have a very stressful situation. They might drop their prices to liquidate their own challenges or might come out of it. But at this, I mean, when we are talking of today, RERAs will have a sympathetic view of situations with developers. NCLT will have a sympathetic situation with developers. NBFC will give further period of moratoriums. So where is the rush? Where is the hurry to try and make sure that you liquidate them at the prices which will actually deliver more financial burden to you? I always believe, and I've maintained this since the time this crisis has hit the country, that the ready inventory would actually might go for a premium. You heard that from Murli. You heard that from others also. The inventory which is ready-made might actually demand some premium compared to a reduction because people would try. And this was something which was touched upon in the previous panel also. Now it is no longer about one room house because you do need two room houses because you have a completely changed world. Consumption will increase, and that's where the moment you are looking at, and while I'm saying this, this is not immediate, sorry, by the way. This is after 6 to 10 months wherein people are out of the shock and have started gaining their senses. I do believe the price fall will only be sporadic in those areas wherein developers have not been able to remain afloat because of their own effort. And if they don't have those wherewithal to do it, I'm sure there are people like Anurag, there are people like Kanchana, Chaitanya, who can help them professionally to remain afloat and try and find out what is the best way to manage their businesses.
So, Mr. Mukund, one thing that builders would actually want to know across the country, even if these things are being adopted, even if these things, builders move to this kind of new technologies, people move to online advertising, do you think that financially this helps them to stay afloat? And not just, I'm not talking about profitability at all. I'm talking about the whether they would be will not, whether they will not be making a loss at least. Do you think that even if they adopt it, if this is good for talking, but do you think financial, practically, online advertising, use of technology, if builders do this, that is does this give any kind of guarantee to builders that they will actually eventually will be financially viable?
There are a couple of things. I mean, most of the organizations, when you look at a particular project or a development's budget, I'm sure with the rest of the infrastructure done in the conventional way, a lot of the marketing budget would have already been upfront consumed during the launch or the initial stage of the project. So there is going to be definitely a bit of a stress in migrating to the digital in terms of developing specialty content and other stuff. But what we realized was, even in your conventional, a lot of material, both in terms of your walkthroughs, both in terms of your visuals of the product, in terms of maybe the drone shoots of the particular location. All this is always available with the builder. It just requires some amount of interlinking all these elements that we have to create content good enough for a customer to get a complete view of this particular development. So you don't need to be getting into a budget freeze on your digital part of it. It can be done in phases. Do it a little of it to start with, but then as we move, you need to then expand on the content, expand on your exposure on the digital, because in times to come, I'm sure digital would be a major proportion of a spend of a developer towards marketing and advertisement. So beyond it, in fact, if it's done well, we believe digital should actually reduce your cost per lead as well as cost per closure. So if you do it well, do it systematically, do the right sourcing, brand is trustworthy, you may in fact in the long run find with digital your margins will be better protected compared to what we used to be done doing in the past, spending a huge amount of money. Now, in addition, Ankit, you had one question for Kanchana. I was in fact surprised. A lot of the channel partners in the MMR area, they are pretty well, I would say, tech savvy. In fact, a lot of them during our launch were asking us to uh, share with them some of the content which they wanted to share on their digital platforms. And the channel partners are already ready to migrate into this particular new way of doing business. It just needs the entire ecosystem to work together and make it happen. And one last point, the price point of it, I just wanted to make one point beyond what Nimish said. Uh, One is we don't need to be getting into a panic situation to reduce your price unless you are a situation of stressed fund where you have no choice but to liquidate your inventory. But if you are in a reasonable, comfortable position in the midterm, I think what we all definitely need to do is don't get into an over leverage or an over exposure on your inventory. Whatever inventory you have on hand, try and liquidate that before getting into any new launches of towers or projects or any new inventory. So once you do that, the stress on the inventory holding cost is going to be relatively low, which will ensure we are not compelled into looking at panic reduction of prices and all. Because if your price is right, the project will sell, the product will sell, the customer will come to you. You don't need to reduce your price to attract a customer.
One thing that Mukund mentioned was the customer acquisition. Builders always look at it from the cost of customer acquisition perspective. Do you think that the online advertising and the way they do it, the operational cost eventually would be low if they succeed in this, if they bring in the online sales, actual sales, if they start happening and not just the lead generation? Do you think the operation they will be able to keep the overall operational cost low, and eventually this will mean that their cost of customer acquisition would be less? Do you think that this is a possible scenario, or do you think this we are still far away from this?
So I can't agree more than what Mr. Mukund said. Digital in a long term is actually supposed to make things far more effective and profitable. And we have seen results with multiple developers. If you look at it, the content which can be put on the social media actually improves the quality of leads vis-a-vis the traditional media. So that's one thing. Second, digital allows you to scale up operations far more. The outreach can be far more. There is no way better than digital to actually scale up. I'll give you very small examples, which I think all developers have already witnessed. Earlier, pre-COVID, there used to be a large CP meets and people used to spend lakhs and lakhs of rupees to get all CPs put together and spend that much of money. Now they are doing virtual CP meets at a fraction of the cost. The second important thing is these digital medium allow you to actually engage, interact, and understand more, which makes everything far more effective. And the third bit is, if you look at digital, the power of digital would be you can actually optimize the performance and the price both. So when you're running a particular campaign, while I'm putting a particular creative, while I'm looking at a particular target audience, I can actually fine tune it based on the feedback I'm getting, based on the kind of engagement I'm getting. The challenge which developers need to look at is, in today's market, I think everybody is talking about a similar kind of thing. Everybody is talking about offers or amenities or elevation. Now, how do I break this clutter and create my own voice? How do I generate that kind of a content which actually engages people and engages with that brand? And I think that is what is going to make a key differentiator. And social media essentially provides those platforms, creating those beautiful videos, engaging stories, by which actually you can communicate the essence of the brand, engage with people more. Because in traditional, when you give a print media, there's no way you can get a feedback. Today, people tweet, share, comment, like, and that's where the engagement improves. So the quality of leads are only increasing. The cost per leads are coming down. And over a period of time, the brand index is only supposed to go move up because the way digital is going to come up. And the one more thing probably people will need to do is reshape their entire mix. So probably if you don't want to spend, maybe you're spending 2% on the marketing budget today, maybe the spend probably which was 20-25% on digital needs to move up to maybe 50 to 70%. The effectiveness, I think people talked about, I think 2 crore worth of show flag to be made. That inspired trust, not a fraction of the cost. I'm not saying that is not important, but the fraction of the cost, you can actually try and create experiences which make people far more believe, because of the trust is there. All these things make far more easier to happen.
Okay,
So
now
let
we
me
will. Please.
Sorry, let me just add one point to this, and I'm giving up a very interesting point over here, and bear with me, it's a longish thing. And you asked that question of Kanchana, as to how consultants are bearing. So we're both on the same side of the industry, and it's very relevant for us, but it's very relevant for the industry as such. So if you look at examples, and America, this study has been done, there is research available on this. Now, if you see how is what you call as channel partners or brokers and so on, whatever you may call it, how they compensated for the sales of housing units is they get a commission, right? Which the developer pays typically, which used to be the model for stock markets as well. If you traded certain amount of stock, you would pay a percentage of that to your stockbroker. That's now gone. We know that it's all electronic, and there's fixed commissions and fractional commissions, etc., which is there now. Now, how does that compare the two? In United States, the on a like to like volume, if there is so much trading on equities that happens online, and that's the volume of housing sales that happen, the brokerage that is paid on housing sales is 10 times that of equity sales. So if you traded shares of a certain value, and the commission that you will pay for that, if you bought houses worth that same value, you would pay 10 times commission on that. Now that is a number out there. Now you can argue saying two Microsoft shares look at exactly the same, right? Two Amazon shares, there's no difference between, but there is a difference between housing, and there is qualitative aspect, and you need some intervention. But the fact is, does it that exists? That's true, but does it justify 10 times the value? It perhaps not. And in a country like America, where there is very large sections of suburban housing where the houses, 500 houses, look identical, with very little difference, and they don't have the whole concept of vastu and many other things. It's almost commoditized. So there still a value in 10 times commission being paid for that? And therein lies the answer. If you move towards technology, if you move towards digitization, that 10x, even if it comes down to 5x, that's 50% upside or savings to be made just on that component. And that is the journey that only the digital transformation can allow, can get you. So you'll easily pay for it or more.
Okay. Now we open the session for live questions that we have, and the first one, we already have a lot of questions. The first one I would like to ask to Nimish. The question says, isn't there a trust deficit for everything digital? I feel the one-on-one interaction will have to be designed to bridge the gap. that will mean that the front line will have to be heavily trained to address this need. Now, training is one thing that we have not talked about is as of now. If we are to go to, if we have to use the new technologies, if we have to go online, we have to use different aspects, not just builders, a lot of employees, a lot of brokers, a lot of channel partners, they all need to be trained and they all need to, move to these kind of technologies. So this is a very relevant question. What would you like to comment on this? Do you think that we are
Ankit,
ready
I
for
think
this?
an extremely relevant and a very good question that way. While we are looking at technology, and you're absolutely right, Anurag briefly touched upon it. How do we make sure that people who are in the stakeholder chain are equipped with the necessary skills to try and adopt this? As a new age professional body, Ankit, RICS believes in making sure that we try and equip people with those knowledges, which is important for them to be relevant. It is imperative for each of these individuals to try and adopt. Today, I don't think any one of us in this world can live without WhatsApp, because that's a technological platform, and that's something which is now majorly available. So it's a necessity. So in terms of making sure that this trust, so while you're talking about trust deficit on a face to face, so there were two parts of it: the face to face and the digital one. I don't think I'll have to tell about what happened with face-to-face approach, with the kind of inventory which is lying in NCR region or possibly other areas. That happened on face-to-face. There was a huge trust deficit despite this being done face-to-face. In fact, people were fleeced on their face, and I would say so, by promises which were not kept. Digital at least gives you, and I think Kanchana rightly put it up, you have the capability of exploring everything, making sure that you do your own research, whether it is Quora, whether it is Instagram, whether it is social media, getting the reviews of that particular brand. And today the brand will actually become more powerful. And as I said in my beginning as well, Ankit, it is extremely important that this millennials and Gen Z who believe in brand are given believable stories, and those believable stories will come only, they will consume those stories only digitally. Let me tell you honestly, this millennial generation and Gen Z generation is not going to consume anything which is physical. They are going to consume everything digital. First, the digital impact will have to be made. That impact will then lead them to a content rich area, which could be your website, which could be an augmented reality platform so that people can use it, develop that confidence, and then start taking a plunge into an actual sales process. You heard Sanjay saying that after this, if you have given a sales consideration, maybe you have a 1 month's time during this lockdown period and then try and reconvene your sale process completely. That's how things will work. There is no doubt that people will have to move towards digital system. RERA is also trying to become digital with that common open platform which they're talking about it. So the regulations will become digital. The prop tech is actually now very promising. Making sure that everyone is skilled in that is an important area. There is no way people can say, I'm not going to learn the new age technology, because that's not how it works. It has to be, and it is not about the young generation, by the way. We possibly now at the other side of the hill are also making sure that we are trying to learn the technology. Today, when we are meeting on GoToWebinar, that's an example of how we have moved away from a face-to-face meeting to an engaging platform, which is actually reaching out to thousands of individuals and listening to our thoughts. That's because we just learned few things. Somebody taught us, somebody skilled us. So there is an approach which is required on skilling.
Okay, Mr. Mukund, I will put you on spot because this is a very relevant question. But how much of transparency are builders willing to share online in terms of availability of inventory, legality of projects, etc., in their digital efforts? If you could answer to that.
Yeah, Ankit, I mean, the answer is, do we have a choice? At this point of a time, if we need to be surviving, not today, but at least we have a long-term, a long-haul story and an aspiration to be a developer, we have no choice but to ensure 100% transparency. And as Nimish said, all the stories of NCR, Noida, and all that, which is completely due to the trust issue. I'm sure lessons have been learned by every one of us, and I don't think we have a choice. We have to abide by it, and it will compel us, all of us, to fall into for this particular line of working.
The other question is builders should update their so builders update their stage of construction on the RERA site. Now, do you think that the same thing can be done online, and do you think that this will eventually help the gain again? So this is a more or less similar question, but do you think that this can help gain the home buyers trust?
Yeah, I mean, one is the progress of work on RERA is updated in a limited information point of view. But once you are into digital, I'm sure in times to come, there could be cameras which are installed onto the project site, which can even be beaming live the progress of construction. There can be a lot of augmented reality interface with it, which a particular buyer could also try and understand what is the stage his particular apartment is reached towards the final completion and handing over. So there's a lot of exciting stuff, Ankit, which can be done. Uh, Enablers are already there, like Kanchana said. The digital revolution has brought in a lot of enablers in terms of the bandwidth, the mobile usage. Plus, now we have a lot of these applications like the Zoom. Zoom is an application which can even work at a very, very low bandwidth. So you don't need a very high bandwidth to get into a video call with a customer for any discussion. So with all these enablers, as well as the other enabler that you have in terms of the e-payment, I think it's just that there's a missing link of the digital advertisement and marketing, which we need to be traversing over the period of next few months. So the inventory status, availability of stock, construction status, everything can be very transparently covered and displayed and disclosed on the website. I mean, we will not have a choice but to do it as we move on.
I will ask to Anurag. Out of home advertising, do you think that this will see a major reduction when it comes to the overall budget spend of builders? Do you think that this builders will move to digital advertising, and the budget allocation will be more to the digital advertising?
Yeah, look, I'm not a marketing or advertising expert, so difficult for me to give you very definitive answers on that. But look, the fact is, digital will gain more currency from here onward. So I suspect you will find more and more spend, and you will find more uptake of the digital platforms in terms of spend and usage, etc., etc. But also do bear in mind, it's not you can't paint everyone with the same brush. Now there will be projects and there will be developments which are relevant for digital purposes because they need wider visibility and remote viewing and so on and so forth. But they will still be very local or hyper local projects, small projects which are meant to be bought by a very small local population, and there is no need for someone sitting very remotely to be looking at those projects. In which case, would you want to go the whole hog on digital over there? Maybe the answer is not. Like I said, I'm qualifying, I'm not the expert, but I suspect there will be horses for courses. There are projects where you will have to go really bells and whistles the whole way on digital. There will be instances where you need not, because the your relevant customer base is sitting right there. So I think there'll have to be.
Okay, this question also we have talked about this, but digital marketing is a huge success in the FMCG segment because of the accessibility, affordability, and mainly impulsive buying of the customer. Do you think, Kanchana, I will ask this to you. Do you think, and then Chaitanya, you can also add to this. Do you think that can be applied, same kind of techniques with some kind of modifications can be applied to real estate sector?
We have seen all that happen in the last 6 weeks, Ankit. I mean, there is no other better answer than this. To add to Mukund, I think he was mentioning about Zoom. I'd like to give you an interesting statistic. Zoom, as of December, had 10 million users. As we speak, Zoom has 200 million users. This would not have come but for the virus. So I think digital is something that real estate has been embracing, but that's the only way going forward. In fact, Nimish was talking about millennials. 10 years from now, we're going to have Gen Z coming in. And interestingly, by 2030, according to India's demography, the median age in India is still going to be 31, while US and China will be at 40 and 42 respectively. So there is no way we can't shy away from digital, and that's the only way. We have to embrace technology and find ways and means to adapt and adopt to this technology. It's going to be it's going to, I think once we come out of this crisis, all organizations will have to put their thinking caps on and embrace this, Ankit. There's no
Okay.
other better way than.
Great, great. Okay. Thank you all for joining us. I think we are
Ankit,
we are
I
very
have
short of
one
time.
last point.
Yes, yes,
Ankit, I
please,
have
please.
one last summary to make. In fact, for the last 2 hours, this question has been going around in this webinar, and I thought it's important I let the elephant inside the room. We're all talking about real estate prices, supply, demand coming down, prices going down. I think on a lighter note, real estate industry is a big punching bag. So anybody and everybody can speak about price fall. Everything happens. We've seen that. But this shock that we're facing is not only one industry. Across the globe, there is going to be a short-term glitch, a medium-term glitch, depending on what industry they are in. During 9/11, we thought aviation will never take off. We thought high-rise buildings are never going to come. Unprecedented incidents always lead to everlasting changes. And I think it's going to be a glitch until we find a cure for this virus guy. And in the next 6, 8, 10 months, whatever that span is, real estate, a home has become such an important thing, be it for millennials, Gen Z, or people like us. I think real estate will come extremely stronger, and we strongly believe 2021 we will get back on our feet like every other industry.
Great, great. Okay. So unfortunately, we are running out of time, so we will have to end the session. Great. Thank you all for joining us. It has been
Thank you.
real insightful for everyone and every viewers. And thank you again for joining us. Now we
Pleasure
will.
is all
Sure.
ours.
Thank you.
Thank
Jai
you.
Hind.
Thank you.
Thank you.